This video is brought to you by the Crafts channel in association with Rowan Yarns and Purplelinda Crafts. For more information, visit www.knitrowan.com and www.purplelindacrafts.co.uk. I'm going to move on to joining your granny squares together. So when you've managed to crochet a few and you want to make your blanket, you join the front of your squares on top of each other. I'm just using a contrasting yarn here so you can see what I'm doing, but if you use the same yarn you won't be able to see the seam as much. So if you join the yarn in the corner, I'm just going to create an anchor and a chain so that I've got the height for a double crochet. This creates quite an invisible seam, but as I said, there are other ways to do this. This is just how to crochet them together, but you could sew them using mattress stitch. So I've created my one chain. I'm going to start to double crochet, and you want to insert your hook into both stitches of both granny squares. So I'm going to go through one of the stitches and then back through the other and then grab the yarn from behind that. It might be a little tricky, so I'm going to grab the yarn, pull it through once like I'm doing a normal double crochet, and continue doing that. So insert it into the next stitch. It's a little sticky. Grab the yarn and pull it through both loops. If I continue doing this through each of the stitches, even the one chain spaces, you want to do that into the stitch and not into the space. You create an invisible seam, but obviously you can see mine because I've done it in a darker yarn, and that way you don't get any ridges or bunches. But if you want to use a darning needle to do this, you can, just using mattress stitch like you would a knitted object. So if you wanted to try a different method and create more texture on your piece, you might want to create some ridges in between each of the squares. I'm going to use different granny squares for this, just to make it a bit more colourful. And for this you put the wrong sides together, line up the corners so that you make sure you're stitching exactly into each corner. Anchor your yarn in place, and you're going to just do a slip stitch through each of the stitches. So anchoring my yarn, and do a slip stitch into each of the stitches along to create a chain and one slip stitch. You do this a few times, going down each of the stitches. Obviously I'm using a different colour yarn, but if you did this in the same colour that you did your last border in, you wouldn't be able to see it. And here you can see I've created a ridge so the edges of the granny square stick out. If I continue doing this through all the corners, it creates a really nice textured effect. So I'm going to keep slip stitching down just so you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing. Insert into both of the stitches of both of the granny squares and match them up. You should have the same number of stitches, but if one square is bigger than the other, just ease it in. Slip stitch. And if you open it out, you've got that lovely ridged effect where you can see both of the seams. Continue doing this down all of the squares, and you should have a big blanket by the end of it. If you join the colours in whatever pattern you've decided to do them in, and then just make sure that the corners and the edges are all really tight, as well as weaving in your ends to finish.